See if that works or not. If it doesn't work, I'm gonna carry on anyway. So I don't know if you follow or not, but I actually caught COVID. So note to self: don't do a UK van tour, meeting lots of small business owners and talking to them during a global pandemic. And it was I was fully vaxxed, thank goodness. I wasn't boosted, but I had like a bad flu and sort of aches and pains for about about a week or so. It wasn't too bad, but it was hard work, and I was quite lucky in a way that I've got a great team that could just sort of crack on without me. Otherwise, things would have come to a standstill. And one of the things that kind of realised, and I sent out my newsletter. I sent it out about a couple of hours ago, actually, is that the impact that has on small businesses. It's potentially profound. We're a sort of a startup really, but it kind of ended our van tour. Huge amount of planning went into that. There were lots of people to meet. We had a big event in Birmingham, event in Bournemouth, event in Cardiff. I can see people coming in now. So this actual ad hoc one is working. So hello, double A. Who else we got here? So we got I saw Joanne there. Got Adam. Got Armago UK. These names crack me up. Coleman. But welcome. Anyway, so we had all this, all this planning done, and let's face it, some money went into that: time, effort, energy, resources, getting people together, partners. We had chambers of commerce, we had the Development Bank of Wales, all these people. To be fair to them, and full respect, put a lot of effort into helping us organise this tour. So myself, and my partner Nicola, I hope she's watching. We were going around in our sort of a converted Jakarta van, which is like a yacht on wheels inside, at least, not so much outside. And we were sort of sleeping in not quite lay-bys, but fields, and we were sleeping in each town, no hotels. But it kind of put the kibosh to it. That was the end of that. We spent the weekend with some people, and then we were sort of perturbed by the fact we might have given that whole group COVID as well. But we're over it now. My taste has slowly come back, but I'm back. But it was a real bleak reminder of the impact that can have on small businesses. And we're going to get some questions, but in my newsletter I sent out, and if you haven't signed up yet to my newsletter, then please do so. And at the moment, actually, it's been I'll give you a reminder here. Pitch to peers has kind of overtaken it a bit. So at the moment, if you go to moblocks.com, you'll see basically the pitch to peers competition. We're launching this is more of a static holding page, to be honest with you. We're launching the actual website in a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to sign up for the competition or just as a member of Moblocks if you want to. But right now, the big news is pitch to peers. So this is a competition. You can win £10,000. I'm not going to ask for any equity in your business. I'm not going to ask for the money back plus interest. It is literally no strings attached. Think of it as a grant. And you have to enter the competition. There's some terms and conditions in terms of things you want you to cover. It's about aspiration, sustainability, technology, how have we dealt with COVID, what is the ambition, and tell us about the business, tell us about you. Actually, that's really important as well. And then 5 finalists, they get the chance to pitch to me in person, on video. We'll see where we are at the time. So that's very, very excited about that. It just keeps locking this. It's really annoying my phone. So that's really quite exciting. And I think £10,000 is a reasonable amount of money. That can be the difference between helping you get through a difficult trading period, or paying off potential debts you've incurred over the last 18 months. And in my newsletter I sent out, I talked a bit about this flipping Omicron. What is going on? It sounds like every single one of these variants that appears sounds more like a James Bond villain's network. They're trying to scare us or not. But the point is that I'm not going to go on and on about it because it's in my newsletter. But the point is that there is light at the end of the tunnel to some extent, but I think that that light might be a bit further away and a bit weaker than we think it is. So I keep saying, and I'll keep saying like a broken record, is don't bet the farm, don't put all your chips on red, don't go bananas unless your business is particularly one that benefits from this difficult period in time. But uncertainty kills businesses, and we've got inflation, you've got supply chain issues, Brexit, did I mention it? I'm involved in businesses where we're struggling to get parts now. We're looking at sort of over a year for some of the parts we need to build the products. And that's a nightmare. It makes it very, very difficult to plan. So just be careful what you're doing with your resources in the meantime. Also, as we launched the Van Tour, we had to launch, and not that we didn't want to, clearly, we had to launch our social media. So We're now up to, I don't know, over 300 or so followers on Instagram. There's one thing you can do for me. I'm sitting here on my own, twiddling knobs and buttons and talking to you and doing my bit. Um, then is please follow us on Instagram. That's all I ask. That's the only entry fee. Twitter as well, if you want to. We're on LinkedIn as well. So we've got a several, about coming up to 1,000 followers now, actually. So we want to build up a social network. I think over time, I'm going to start moving my content from my social media accounts over to MoBlocks because that is the focus. And MoBlocks, to remind you, is we're building a tech and tools platform for owner-led businesses, and we use owner-led. We could call it small businesses, but in these businesses could be a startup. You don't always intend to be small, but for right now you are. And we're basically building a platform that is going to enable small businesses to understand and make better technology purchasing options. So technology is the key to success. It's the key to productivity. COVID has only proven that even more. And I spent many years in the channel, selling things to small businesses and working with large companies, and they're rubbish. It's like the banks were in the 1990s. So think of us as the Monzo, the Tide, the Revolut, the Starling of this telecoms and small business services sector. And we're going to be launching those services in the new year. So I'm very excited about that. Huge amount of work and engineering has gone into it. But hopefully it'll be a game changer. So the content we're going to be putting out, we're going to start industrializing it. So we built a studio. I need some more stuff on my shelves, though, which I'll get around to. I'll buy some books or something, or some lights, all the usual stuff. But what we're trying to do is change up the game. We're on the side of small businesses, and our services are going to be, and they're going to be built specifically for small businesses. No more nonsense, being sold stuff you don't need, for the wrong price. So we'll come back to that in due course. Let's get some questions. Now, we did have one actually. I'm not going to try and pronounce your name. It looks like I'm not even going to try. Aki Budinim Ahmed. I don't know if there's a picture of a couple, but it's a good question actually. So I'll do this for an hour. Otherwise, I know you've all got things to do. And it's the question I get quite a lot, which is, do you recommend offering equity into your business for an amount X of money for an investor, or getting a business loan of the same amount? Now, I have actually been editing one of the articles for our website, which we're going to be launching in a couple of weeks, and it was actually on the point of raising debt finance for a reasonably new business or small business. And I often get asked this question, and the fundamental point, there's two things I always say. Well, the one is I've got a YouTube channel. So on there's a video called Raising Finance for Your Startup. And I talk about these concentric rings of where you raise money from. And in the middle are people that love you. People will give you money because it's your mum. And then you've got people that don't know you so well. It may be friends of friends of friends, acquaintances, neighbors. Then you've got people that, that don't know you from Adam. And they can be angel investors. And then you get even further, actually, which are, VCs, private equity. You can keep going. And, you've got to be trying to raise money from the right people at the right time. Otherwise, you're going to become very frustrated, very tired, and burn a lot of shoe leather, and you're wasting your time, basically. So you think about that. And also, the other point is, don't try and push square pegs through round holes. There is no point, really. I'll come back to the startup loans company in a minute. There's no point trying to raise debt finance for a startup company. You are wasting your time. Not only are you wasting your time, it's the wrong kind of finance for your business. What debt does, if you've got a mortgage, you'll know this. If you don't pay your mortgage, someone's going to come and take your house off you. And that means you're probably going to lose any equity or big part of it you've got left in it. So you've got to be able to service that debt. And as you know, with a mortgage, no matter how complicated debt is, I used to be an investment banker, you can always explain it by relating it to a mortgage. And most people understand a mortgage. And you have to service your mortgage. And what a mortgage company, the lender, wants is cash flow. That's your income. And they're going to check your business has that. New businesses don't tend to have steady cash flows or profits, at least. You're going to want a profit. Otherwise, you haven't got cash flow. Revenue is not cash flow. And you've got to have assets. So in the case of a mortgage, the asset is the house. In the case of a small business, it might be, we'll come back to personal guarantees as well. It might be assets, it could be machinery, it could be property, but often, because they're not completely certain or sure they'll get their money back from your small business, because it hasn't got the secure proven cash flows or the asset backing, they'll ask you for a personal guarantee. So the asset backing actually becomes your assets, your car, your house, or whatever you've got, essentially. And that pierces this whole idea of limited liability. It's called piercing the corporate veil. That means that it's useless to you because your business doesn't work out. They're going to come after you. So if you're starting a business, very few people, unless they love you or know you very, very well, are going to lend the money to you. And even people that know you and they lend you money, they probably expect you personally to pay them back. They're not really worried about the business because it's kind of a, they're lending you money. So number one is don't try and push that square peg for a round hole. If you're starting a business, you want equity. You want people that they're in the same boat as you. They're willing to take more risk. They're not really expecting their money back. They're definitely not expecting interest payments, which put pressure on the business. So don't there is one exception to the rule, there always is, and that's called a startup loans company. So I used to be on the board of the government bank, British Business Bank, and they operate the startup loans company. Now, what the startup loans company does, it will provide you with a personal loan of up to £25,000 per founder. I think up to four founders, so up to 100 grand. It's a personal loan that you then invest in the business. So if the business doesn't work out, they are still going to come after you for for the loan, for the repayment. Now, they help you, they mentor you. In some cases, if you've got a troubled credit history, they can see past that if you can explain that. So that's one source of money potentially for a startup or a new business. I think it's up to, I can't remember exactly, 2 years, I think it might be, you've been trading. But generally, debt is not the right source of the right type of finance for a young or startup company. So that's hopefully quite a long-winded, but a very important answer to that question. Hello, Simon. First Principles. Hello again. I know you've been here before. Escape Conversion. This is a chap who actually built our posh van that we've been touring the UK in. Piotr again. So we've got some quite a few people in now. What I need though are some questions. So hello, Piers. Are you open to having graphic design work made future? Double A, email me or ping me on LinkedIn or somewhere. Yes is the answer. That we had this discussion yesterday. We want to, and if you want to industrialize, think about businesses, and this is kind of a question, I suppose, is that if you want to industrialize anything, you have got processes, systems, policies. It's boring. Most entrepreneurs don't like doing this, but we want to, industrialize our content output. So we need a way. If I do this live stream now, and we produce some content and we want to cut it up and chop it up into pieces and brand it and send it out on social media. Who's going to do that? What's the process? When's it going to be done by? Who's going to take that content and who's going to distribute it on different channels? So often you try and do it all yourself, and that doesn't really work because it's not often when you're building a business the best the best use of your time. You can do other things that are sort of revenue generating revenue. So think about who it is. And we were talking literally about this, double a few days ago, that we need someone who can do that work for us, essentially. Right. Yeah. So, Mohammed, so, so we're being a bit stealth about MotoBlocks because we want to launch it. But essentially, I think I mentioned it when I started off, is that the how do I put this? So essentially, we're building a platform for small businesses to help them understand their options and basically purchase IT communications, all the technology and tools you need to be successful. And the big issue is there is a micro issue. The macro issue is that small businesses, especially in the UK, they're not as productive, not as efficient, and therefore probably likely to be not as successful as they could be because they're not adopting technology. And there's lots of reasons for that that are well documented. One is the fact that technology is not designed for small businesses because they're quite a disparate group of people. You tend to get enterprise software that's then shoved. It's kind of marketed really for small businesses, which doesn't always work. Anyone until a few years ago, if you've been in business for a while, and you had a local IT comms provider that came around and sold you stuff and built it for you. It doesn't work anymore. The cloud and software as a service has killed that. And people, it doesn't make any sense for anyone to do that anymore. That one-to-one support has gone. So what you need is one-to-many support. So we want to produce content that is about technology and some business tools that enables you to understand your options and make better purchasing decisions. And therefore, you'll be more successful, you'll be more efficient, you'll be more productive. Now, on that journey, we're looking at the core services and some of the, we're not going to build every single type of software as a service. Clearly, there were multi-billion dollar companies that provide great software. Question is, do you know which one you should be using? So we are, however, though, looking at some of the core services small businesses use, and we are reimagining and we are completely re-engineering them for you. Um, and these are the things you use day to day, These are, key tools, network access, telecoms, all this kind of all these tools that you don't even realize it actually quite often that your business it relies on. They're not built for you. They're built for consumers, and it's time that changed, and that's what we're going to do. So there'll be a lot more information coming out over time. Right, who else have we got here? From first principles, I'll answer your question because I know you're a regular contributor. Um, Building trust with customers, I think, and this is one of the advantages of having a small business or a startup, is that you can build trust, you can build relationships, and large companies, they suffer from this faceless brand increasingly that people don't trust. They don't believe anything they say, and they can't engage with them, and it's hard for them to build relationships. And this is one of the key advantages small businesses have over large companies because large companies were able to compete or they controlled markets because they had the infrastructure, they had the assets. They still have to some extent. It's quite hard to replace some of it in many cases, but now you've got the cloud, you've got infrastructure. You can have most of your business based on variable costs. You can have the whole world turning into gig economy, and people are going to be contracted to deliver certain tasks over time. So even your personnel become a variable cost. So what it means is your business can provide services and scale with demand, scale with the success, and scale with your ambition. Big companies, they are where they are. The problem is they struggle to scale down. They struggle to innovate. So as a small company, you can build a relationship, and the best way of doing it, I think, is being honest, being reasonably transparent. I often talk about MoBlocks. I need to do more actually about the things that we're doing. So we're building a business. We have good days, we have bad days, we have fan tours that get cancelled. We have endless discussions with our engineering team about what features we should have and what the costs are of doing that and what that impact that is on time and the size of the team. We have all these things that every business faces. We're going through it all. But what you can do is, you can show provenance, you can show who you are, what makes you tick, what your brand's about, what your business is about, and why you're doing it, why it's important to you, why your customers are important to you. Your customers can reach out, they can touch you, they can get to know you, they can get involved in your content, they can contribute, you can build a community. I mean, MoBlocks, we want to build a community. I think the future of business is communities. So, reach out to your customers and build a relationship. And that's how you build trust. You can't buy trust. I keep touching the screen, make sure Instagram doesn't disappear. You can't buy trust. You can't pay someone to build it for you. Trust is something you earn, and there's no other way of doing it other than over time building a relationship with your customers. Because what you will then find is they will keep coming back, and it's a competitive advantage that the large players just can't compete with. Yeah, I'll just follow on from that. So, because you're a small company as well, um, this is why I'm starting MoBlocks, right? You can't expect customers to they like you, they love your business, they love what you're doing, how you're doing it. Even we can't expect them to accept that your cybersecurity, the way you treat their data, is not up to scratch. But there's no excuse. Large companies use Azure, the Microsoft platform, Amazon AWS. You can have cyber software. There's you can have systems to teach your staff. And I was just saying to someone earlier in the newsletter as well that you can't, cyber and security is actually probably more important for small businesses because the criminals out there, that's what they are. They see you as the soft underbelly of commerce, really. They might come after your business and completely destroy it just as collateral damage to get at a much larger company that you're in, that you're in of whose supply chain you're in. So, you might have people that aren't trained that click on emails they shouldn't do, or they fall foul to social engineering or phishing, So, be really, really careful that your customers, they might trust you, that we talked about earlier, but you also need to make sure you're using technology to ensure that you are protecting your business and therefore you're protecting them, especially their personal data. Right, let's see what else we've got in here. Oh, there's probably comments on Instagram, and I've got absolutely no idea. Oh, Gavin Kingsley. Hello, Gavin. Um, let's have a look. How would you like to help my mountain bike clothing business? Oh, I'm this deep in mountain bikes with Atherton bikes, and we producing clothing as well. So there might be a slight conflict, but good luck with that. Okay, there's one here, Calvade. I was the same person on. It's not, but here we go. Hi, Piers. I've got a business, but I'm also at medical school. It's doing really well currently, but I'm scared of using my cash in the bank to pay for someone full time whilst I am qualifying. I think I meant to say. Um, Again, common question. So the point about hiring people is, and obviously, if you've got to decide what you want to do. Actually, I mean, I'm a lawyer by training, so I spent 7 years, I think it is. I did a 4-year degree, law and accounting. I went to law school and did 2 years training to become a lawyer. And I left law, I think the week I qualified for the bright lights of investment banking. So being a doctor is potentially a bit different. I don't know if it's a vocation or not. You've got to decide what you want to do. Having said that, I do think that there's a business in everybody, and everyone should think about having a business. I had a business when I was 13 years old, when I was doing my A levels, I suppose, at university. I had business on the side at law school. When in my training contract, even when I was in the city. So and what you do, you learn. You make mistakes and you learn, and you not only do you learn how to operate a business, you actually learn what you're good at and what interests you. But things change. So think about where you can spend your time and how much time you can spend on it. Because at the end of the day, especially in starting a business, there's no one better to be running it, to be selling, to be dealing with customers than you. And you can't just delegate that. It's very, very hard. What you can delegate, what you should delegate, are the things that don't add a huge amount of value, the mundane tasks, things that you can outsource, things that you can find someone that can do a better job than you. So the key is that and I've got a video on this on my YouTube channel as well about leveraging your time. If your time is time plus price, no matter what you do, you've got to find a way of leveraging it. And the key to doing that is to focus on what you're good at, focus on where you add the most value for your business and your customers, and everything else, automate it or outsource it. And if you've got a side hustle, if you're just running some kind of I mean, everyone there's been YouTube million videos about this Amazon FBA thing where you bought something in China and you're marketing and selling it. You don't even see the product. Once you design the product, you can hire someone to sort of do the operational piece for you. But to build a real business, it's a more than a full-time occupation, and you need to be sure that you're not kidding yourself or wasting your time by just thinking you can delegate everything, because you can't. I've seen you there now as well. Right, let's have a look. What else have we got? Should a startup seek okay, it's quite startup-y today. Should a startup seek 100% of required capital from one angel family office who have a strategy of getting three to four on board? Um, Essentially, you want to get the money wherever you can get the money, and whether it's a single individual, a family office, a venture capital fund, angel investors, or several. The only real difference is it is concentration of power, I suppose, to some extent. But you never want to be giving away control of your business anyway at this point. You don't want to be giving away 15, 25% when you're sort of starting out at best in terms of pre-seed rounds. And the most important part of that process is your shareholder agreement. That is where you actually, because in company law, anyone that owns less than 25% can't really do much. So you've got 10% shares in the UK, you can maybe call a shareholder meeting. Once you get to over 50%, then you start to have control of the business. Once you get over 75%, then you absolutely control the business. So at this point, early days, you shouldn't be giving away too much equity, because also, investors should realize that it doesn't really incentivize you to end up, 3 rounds of finance down the road and you don't control your business or even have a sensible share in it. So that's the first thing. But the key is get a good lawyer. Your shareholder. I've seen shareholder agreements, right, where people think they're clever and they raise a lot of money at a good valuation. You look at this agreement; it's got clauses in there saying that you don't hit this profit number, this revenue number in year 3 on this date in this month, then they've got swamp rights. They can come in, they get more shares, they can take over the board. I mean, they've already given their business away. They just don't know it yet. Well, they do now because I told them. So you need to go and change it. So really, it's about your shareholder agreement. What's in there? What are the consent rights? What are the veto rights? What are the board representation rights? And don't just take the money because you're desperate and get your shareholder agreement wrong. I know people that raise, they had a business reasonably, several years old, raised several million, I think 6 million, took a couple of million off the table themselves. Within a month, they didn't work for their business. They didn't own their business. They're gone. And that's because and they ended up in court clearly, as you would do. But that structure is really, really important. It's not so much about who you raise it from or how much. It's understanding what the trade off is. Tom at Escape Conversions, another regular contributor who built my van. Um, what advice have you got for valuation of a business and how much equity to offer investors? Again, quite equity starter. I'll find some other questions soon. When I was about 13 years old, a neighbor, he owned a quarry business actually, and I had this like BMX that I bought for like £400 a couple of years before. It was like the ultimate machine, and I always remember this to this day. It's one of the people said to me, "What's your lessons you've learned in business in your life?" This is one of them. And several years later, it wasn't cool to be riding around a little BMX doing a paper run anymore. So I wanted to sell it. And his son was interested, and he came round, and I gave him this big sales pitch about, oh yeah, it's a Curtis T45 chrome. It's got all these bits and bobs on it. It's a fantastic. I've cleaned it all up. It cost me 400 quid. It must be worth 200 quid. This is like late 80s, right? This is an expensive piece of kit. And he looked at me and he said, Jonathan, because that's what they call me then. I'm called Jonathan Piers, by the way. It's worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. And that those words still ring through me to this day. And that essentially is what it is. So you've got to be looking at your business thinking, right, I need to raise this much money, and I'm your valuation essentially, how much money you raise and your valuation essentially dictates how much equity these investors get in your business. So what you need to do is work out how much you're willing to give away, what's your walk away price. But in startups, often you can't value startups. I used to be a banker, I used to spend my life valuing companies. And you had DCF, discounted cash flow models, company exit values, company trading values, economic value add, all sorts of ways you can value companies, but you can't value them that easily if there's no historical data. So what you're really doing is trying to sell your ambition, sell the potential, sell the size of the prize, sell your ability to execute. And you're saying that I need whatever the number is, I need this much money and I'm willing to give away this much equity. And then you go to the market. Going to one person isn't the market. When you try and sell your house, you don't go knock on one random person's door and say, "Do you want to buy my house and for how much?" No, you don't. It goes on a website, and hopefully thousands, if not millions, of people see it, and you're able to price it. So you go and talk to as many people as possible, and get the feedback and see whether that's in the range. And if it's not in the range, you need to try and decrease the value of your business, decrease the amount you're willing to take. But as I said before, that's only one part of it. Your shareholder agreement, your relationship with those investors is also important. So valuing a young company is an art rather than a science. It's a negotiation. You can clearly look at comparables in the market, but for very young companies, that methodology isn't really applicable. To be honest with you, and you can look if you look at a real sort of tech startup. I know you're not, Tom, but a tech startup. You're looking at how much you give away at pre-seed, how much you give away, seed and Series A, and all the other letters and numbers, and then you can work out that by the end of it, I think I need this much money. How much am I going to own, and does that incentivize me? And if it doesn't, you need to think again. I hope that's helpful, Tom. But you know where I am, Tom. You can WhatsApp me. Right. Who else have we got? I want to try and avoid any that aren't startupy or SaaS. Here's a good one. Mohammed. In your opinion, what's the most underused piece of tech in small business today? Now, on a macro level, it's probably websites and domain names. Very simple stuff. It's not complicated. I see too many, vans driving around. It's Bob at Yahoo's, Bob the Builder at Yahoo.com. It's like, what the hell? Think about branding your business and getting a domain name and setting up email, building a website. So it's amazing. I can't remember the exact numbers now, so I'm not going to get them wrong. It's amazing how many small businesses, or even any business actually, startups don't use the basic technology that's out there, which is just presenting yourself in a robust, professional way. And also, a lot of these systems they have security built in as well. You don't have to worry about it yourself. So it's the real basics. I think then when you get down into Companies that are really embracing technology, and I've got to be quite generic here because there's no point talking about one particular sector. But then, it's sales and marketing automation, and you may think that if you're, a tech founder or you're used to hearing about this stuff, that everybody does this, but they don't. Um, Most small businesses in the UK, 74, 75% are sole traders. 94% of small businesses have less than 10 employees. A minority are tech companies where in terms of their product is software or some other kind of technology or biotech or whatever it might be, or hardware. So, it's the basics, but also things like, sales, marketing, automation. I mean, a lot of companies now are, and the other important thing I think is a lot of companies, they are using technology. So a lot of companies, you probably are using, online accounting software, for example. Um, but what companies aren't doing is gluing it together, plugging it together, automating, using the native integration. So you don't have, you're not transposing data from one application to another. It just does it automatically. So, for example, a lot of online accounting software will bring in automatically your banking information, which is very helpful. Helps you do bank recs, which are a complete waste of time if you're doing that manually. And you've got to move away from multiple spreadsheets and use software. Now, what you have to do though is try and use software that talks use software that can talk to each other. Otherwise, it's very difficult. So, macro level, the basics. On a micro level, it's automating those core processes, your finances and your sales and marketing. Right, let's see what else we got in here. What time is it? 7:05. Let's have a look on Instagram here. I think it keeps closing because my connection doesn't like the internet here. Elizabeth Davis. Hello, Elizabeth. If you were spending £100 on marketing, and I like the number actually, and I'll come back to why, how much would you put into retaining customers and acquiring new ones? Great question. Um, well, let's get rid of, I'm trying to get rid of these things. Right. So the reason I like the number is that a lot of people they come to me and they say, "Look, I want to do digital marketing, whatever the marketing is," and they start throwing thousands of pounds at it, and then before they realise it, it's not working, but they've blown the budget quite literally. And the beauty, of especially digital marketing, and depending on what exact marketing you're talking about, but increasingly most marketing tends to be digital in some shape or form these days. So the question is, what you don't have to do now is just start out and throw thousands of pounds at it. So what you should do, I think what you all seem to be doing correctly is, the beauty of these platforms is you can spend £10, £50, and what you get is feedback. What you get is data. Is that marketing working? Does the copy work? Does the tone of voice work? Does the creative work? Does the placement work? And you can do that with quite small amounts of money. So I'll come back to retention in a minute. So, start with small amounts of money and test and learn. And then once you think you've optimized your return, then start throwing more money at it. But don't just walk away. Keep watching it, keep looking at the data. Marketing now as a science is basically data driven. And keep looking at the data and measure the ROI and see over time what happens. Because eventually, no matter what you're doing, it's going to plateau and taper off. They need to change something again and just keep doing that over time. So, I mean, the kind of budget you're talking about is where people should be starting. Where I've been starting actually with MoBlocks even. The second thing is acquisition or retention, and that's a tricky one. Now, acquisition tends to be quite a different process to retention. Retention is quite a broad spectrum as well. Retention can be, building relationship, me doing things like this, or sending you a newsletter, or even going around to see you, depends what kind of customer you have, or when they come into your shop, you give them a free gift, or you just talk to them, depending if it's a shop in a small village, for example. So lots of ways of retaining customer, rewards programs, loyalty programs, all these things you see large organizations doing, your Tesco club card, it works. And that's why they've been doing it, many, many years later. So, but if you've got a recurring revenue business, just to paint this picture for 1 minute, if your churn, so churn is how many customers you lose every month, every year, over time. If your churn, say 5%, and you reduce that to 2.5% by deploying various, loyalty, rewards, and retention programs, so you reduce your churn from 5 to 2.5%, your business will be twice as big in terms of your recurring revenue in 5 years. That is how important retention is in terms of recurring revenue subscription businesses. It is, without thinking about retention, it's great that you are doing. Without thinking about that, all you're really creating is a leaky bucket. It's just a question of how leaky. And I've watched some great videos, read some books about this. And if you imagine a graph where your customer comes in, you might lose them initially because the product's not for them, and then it kind of flatlines like that and goes along. And then as you bring in more, you get the same. And as it flatlines, those layers they build up. Now, if your customer comes in and over 1, 18, even 2 years, that goes down to zero because they've all gone. As you do it, the line eventually is going down to zero. So eventually, you have to go through the whole population to keep your numbers up. And you see this many, many times. Some organizations, some even VC-backed markets, if you ask me, there's Ponzi schemes going around in circles. So it's really important to bring the customers in and try and keep them for as long as possible. Now, if you're a tech company or you're trying to raise venture capital, they're going to look at your acquisition cost, which you try and optimize. But then the other part of the equation is, or the formula, is the lifetime value. So the longer you keep the customer, the longer they're paying that monthly, weekly, whatever it is, subscription, the more value they create, the higher the LTV, the lifetime value. So your acquisition cost becomes a small proportion of the value of that customer, and that's a really important metric that our investors look at. So retention is, I'm not going to go into how you retain customers because there's lots of different ways of doing it, but retention is something you should absolutely focus on, and lots of people don't. All right, let's have a look. Heath T. I'll come back to Instagram in a moment. I design 3D motorbike parts. It's my passion. Good place to start. I love it and have great feedback from my community, but working by myself can be quite isolating. Any advice? Looking forward to pitch to peers. Good stuff. Yeah, it is isolating. You hear this a lot about people say, it's tough and lonely at the top. It's also pretty lonely when you're starting out. And this is something that many, many entrepreneurs suffer with. And another reason why we're building MoBlocks, I'm sorry to plug it, but I'm going to, on a platform which includes a community, because the community is where, people like yourself, Heath, can talk to other entrepreneurs, other people who are building business, maybe in other people that are into motorbikes, about what you're doing, about your passion, about your struggles, about trying to help each other to be successful. So the key point is that you can get cabin fever. Is you need to get out and meet people, or join communities, join clubs, even if it's your local chamber of commerce, whatever it might be. Or is get out and meet people. And increasingly, with COVID's made it even more difficult. But a lot of these things have moved online, so there's no sort of easy way or magic to it. You have to do is, there are many, many people like-minded like you. I mean, sometimes though, just spending time with people who think like you and do what you do can can also be a bit of a dead end as well. So try and broaden your horizons, and especially if you're running a business, is work out what you're not very good at. Be honest with yourself. Ask people what you're not very good at if you don't know yourself, because they'll tell you, and then go and interact and find groups of people that have that skill set. So not only then you're interacting with people, you're learning as well. There's no point in just spending all your days in some digital or some physical echo chamber. You're not learning, you're not growing. So that's the key to it. Short answer, but I hope that was useful. Let's have a look at Insta. Insta's quite good actually. Can't find many questions there. How can one move? This is always MGM. How can one move on from a 9 to 5 into a business? So this is it's going to be quite a personal thing actually, because if you've got a wealthy family, or you've got money, or you've got savings, you can take the plunge. My advice though is, no matter how much money you've got, is whether they had the question earlier, is I think the doctor it was, is try things. I don't like the words. I don't like side hustle, because these things are more than hustles. That sounds like you've been counting cards. This is more. It's a side business if you're taking it seriously. And when I was a banker in the city, when I was a lawyer as well, actually, we had a side sort of film business. When I was a banker, we started building my first .com business, and I worked literally all the hours God sent in the city, and then more in the evenings and what was left of my weekends when I worked in the city, working on the dot com. So the key really is to, put everything you can into it and just test and try and stay in employment for as long as possible. Because one of the most daunting things about starting a business is that, you can go from having quite a nice income and savings that are growing to having no income or a much lower income. And, you start spending your savings and they start to deplete very, very quickly. Depends on your lifestyle, depends on how much money you need to live on, to pay the bills. It might be 50 grand a year. You might have an expensive lifestyle, need a couple of hundred, and then you need to think about how much time can you give yourself to really try and make this business work. Now, the other thing you can do clearly is to, if you haven't got that kind of cash, is to raise money. So we talked about the startup loans earlier, but you can raise money from friends and family. Go and see my YouTube video about where to raise your startup finance. But again, when you start to raise money, they're gonna start to ask you, "Are you committed?" And if you're saying, "Well, I've got a full-time job and I'll do it in the week on the evenings, although I wanna go and play football on Thursdays and the weekends, I tend to ride my bike," no one's gonna give you the money. So you've gotta balance your commitment, and your ability to fund it yourself. And initially, it probably is funding it yourself in many cases. So if you've got a job that essentially is doing it for you, well, that means that you can actually deploy the savings you have more efficiently because you're not eating into them to run a business or just to pay the bills or to eat or drink. So the I think of it like that: is stay in employment, I always say, for as long as possible. You know, don't take the mickey out of your employer. I've been there myself where obviously someone's trying to start a business and not doing the day job. But if people that work for me, if they want to go and run a business, if they're open about it, I'll help them typically because I expect them to do that at some point. I'd like them to do that at some point. So just think about that. Okay. Nick, I'm not sure what your question is. What's your thoughts on traffic versus conversion? I mean, I think I think I know what you're talking about, which is, just it's basically a sales part of mine. If I'm not, let me know. But traffic versus conversion. I mean, at the end of the day, you've got to have traffic to convert. So as I said before, it's a science, isn't it? It's mathematical. So you need to work out my business to make money. You just do it. You just reverse engineer it. My business to make this much money, I need to sell this many items or these many subscriptions, whatever it is. Therefore, to do that, and if I think my conversion ratio is going to be this, then it kind of tells you how much traffic you need, and then reverse engineer it. And then over time, you have to test it and keep testing it, and just check that your your inputs into your formulae are actually correct. So that's the way to look at it, I think, and that's the way most financial models work. Often, clearly, what you tend to find is the reality isn't quite the same. So you have to change your conversion ratios, and your conversion ratio, it's not just changing a number in a spreadsheet. That changes by improving your marketing, by improving your product, by improving your relationship with your customer, whatever it is. Or we talked about retention earlier as well. So, or selling other things to existing customers. Lots of ways you can do that, but that's where you need to look at that metric. It's absolutely a fundamental one. Okay, we've got under 10 minutes or so. Okay, feasted. Here we go. I think we met. Not sure where we met. Yeah, hi Peter. It's great to meet you a few weeks back. Is it true to expect a longer route to market with a disruptive product such as Feast at Home? Many thanks. I'm still waiting for my Feast at Home package. Actually, I remember. I remember our conversation well. Um, Well, no. So it's a difficult question to answer because it depends what your business is, depends what the market is, depends how disruptive you are, depends how much money you've got to make people aware of your fantastic new disruptive product, etc., etc. There's lots of variables, but I kind of know your business. I remember it, and it, this is the question again of your product market fit, and product market fit is not just something which refers to tech companies. But I know your product. You seem to know your market. You seem to have found some fit, some proof points that there's a certain type of customer that wants to buy it. I know it's not sort of you can't have it picked up until you're going to pick it up yourself. Your food is quite high quality, so you've got to think about who are the customers, how do I get it to them? And again, the key is just like the marketing question earlier. It's not to go rushing into it. It's to really, really try and optimize and really understand who your customer is, what they want from your product, deliver that to them and get feedback. Get outside, go and talk to your customers and get feedback about the product and what it is they like about it, what can be improved. And then when you really do understand that, you think you've got it right, then you start to invest more money into your marketing. And that's where, in this sort of trusting venture capital, that's where they want to invest, where you've shown that there's interest in your product, there's a product market fit, and that if you now spend or invest this much money, you can scale it. And increasingly, especially in sort of subscription based businesses as well, is that you don't have to go and raise lots of venture capital just to go and invest in marketing, some Google or Facebook. You can use there's companies like Juice is one, or Clearco, lots of other companies where you can actually raise a revolver that allows you to invest in debt finance, basically, that allows you to invest in marketing. And if they can see it's coming back in a return on investment in terms of customers and revenue, and you pay them back straight away, they'll keep funding your marketing. So you don't have to expect a longer route to market with a disruptive product. Technically, it should be faster, but a lot of the extremely disruptive products, the Airbnbs of the world, it took them years to get to where they are. These things don't tend to happen overnight, so it can be really frustrating. But just stick at it, get your product right, understand your customer, make sure you connect the dots, and then once you think you've got that right, then you're not going to find any real problem usually raising the finance you need to scale up. Let's see what else we've got here. Not sure about this mic. It keeps fading in and out, but everyone seems to. Let's go and tweak it. Let's have a look. Quite a few questions in there. I'm going to roll down to the bottom. That's quite long. Let's try Instagram, see if it's still. That's a poor connection here. It keeps fading out in the studio. The questions here seem to be slightly more compact. Let's do a Dragon's Den question. We're getting towards the end. Can't help it. Just wonder, do you have any investments still from Dragon's Den, or was each one like a 3 to 5 year plan? And did you ever lose your money on them? Thanks. Yes is well, yes is so it was interesting actually, my Dragon's Den experience and my sort of portfolio, if you look at it that way. I think there was like 9 deals done, 6 closed, because 3 didn't. Things change usually, not on my side, but on their side. And in a venture capital portfolio, you tend to have a flyer or 2 if you're lucky, that kind of return the whole fund, your investment. You have a couple that, they kind of do okay, and a couple that don't, they fail. So my experience was that 1 failed, so I lost my money. Um, the majority, so what's that? So there's 5 left. So 4, I essentially got my money back. And I often read articles about, I won't mention the names, but I read articles about some of the businesses saying this one, they haven't got a clue what they're talking about because a lot of the information is not public. And then I invested in, you got children, a company called Lost My Name, called Wonderbly, which is personalized children's content. And the numbers aren't really public, so I won't go into them. But that's one of the biggest successes on Dragon's Den ever, and probably one of the first real tech investments. That business was sold reasonably recently for, made the founders very, very wealthy, and I got sort of 5% for 100 grand. So that was a real. If that was a fund, that's the one that returned the fund, and that's typically how investments work. You know, you are in some cases going to lose your shirt, but in some cases they'll buy quite a few nice new ones. Okay, let's have a look. Piotr, another regular contributor. Just get my. If you want some merch, by the way, I will be selling MotoBlocks mugs at some point. One thing, if you want to ask questions, keep them brief because I can't. I feel like when I'm reading them, I'm ignoring the cameras, and also they're very, very long. Let's have a look at Piotr here. Right, let's give it a go. It's a long one, too long. Let's go. Well, scope of work. Are they based it on what text do they use? Is it a bespoke website? Was it built for service? Let's have a look where the rest of his question is. Also, keep it together because this gets broken up in the chat as well, and then I can never find the other half of the question. I think here we go. How much allocate website development? Planning to invest in a new website for my business, and the quotes are getting a start from 3K to 10K, 20K for website. Right. Okay. Um, don't worry about the website. And people say to me, "Oh, I want to build an app. You know, what app should I build, and how much will it cost?" And I'm like, "Forget the app, forget the website. What is it you're trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? We're probably trying to solve. What are you going to try and to improve? What is it?" And then once you know what that is, whatever that is, then you can start thinking about, okay, so what are the requirements? And you start to talk to developers about user stories, and it all gets quite technical very very quickly. But just try and understand what problem you're trying to solve, how you're trying to improve something. And if you don't, if you're not very technical, then just write it down. You draw it, literally draw the screens in terms of what you want this thing to do, this app or this website. And then you've got a better understanding, share that with people, see what they think, get some feedback. And only then, when you think you've got a good idea about what it is you want, what the requirements are, only then do you go and talk to somebody about building it. And they may say to you, yeah, it shouldn't be an app. So MoBlocks, for example, we're building web and an app. And my first impression was the web and the app will do very, very similar things. Actually, I think where we're going to end up is a lot of the content community will be based on the web. If you want to buy a lot of different services, probably do it on the web rather than on the phone. Would be able to, but the phone, the app, we're more about managing your services and on the fly as well. So clearly, when you've got a phone as well, you can open a web page. They'll render, if you designed it properly, on your phone or your iPad or even your smart TV. It's the same thing. So you may find that you don't need an app. You may find you don't need a website. You may find that the people who know what they're talking about, they will to be able to talk you through about how you bring your idea, your vision to life, and what the best technology is to do that. Then only then, once you've been through that process, can somebody price it. Clearly, if you've got a budget of £3,000, you want to build a very, very complicated app, which has got a very, very complicated back end, machine learning, and then all sorts of things. Then you're probably kidding yourself. But go through the process and try and really, really, and I know we're doing this at MoBlocks as well, and I've got a fantastic team that help me do this because they're kind of way ahead of me. They can do developing user stories and spreadsheets, and it's all in a platform that developers can pull out pieces and write the code. But don't be that complicated. Don't get worried about it. Don't get bamboozled by it. You're in control. It's your business. It's your idea. These people are going to be developing, using technology to deliver the solution that you need. And only then will you find out what that costs. And you may find it's too expensive. Therefore, you have to look at cost, time, features. Do you take out the features? Do you create something that's more simple to test the market or not, as the case may be? The other way is it tells you how much money you need to raise. Well, I've got a few minutes left. So I'll look at Insta before it freaks out again. Uh, Finem. How can I find tenders and bigger deals for my orthotics? I don't know if it's orthodontics or not orthotics is company. When is your next event so I can meet you? Well, the events will be publicised on social. We're going to be doing a van tour probably in January, but we'll be doing annual events as well. And also, I'm going to be at some of the kind of small business conferences next year, assuming they're on. We'll see where we get to. Well, tenders and bigger deals depends on your market. So I was involved in sort of government market where there was basically platforms. And often there are platforms in every sector where tenders are posted because clearly most these tend to be larger companies. They want to make sure that the market sees their tender. So they tend to in each market be platforms. So that there will be places, and you probably need to do the homework on it, where in your particular market tenders are posted because if there isn't a place people can go, especially small businesses and small businesses in supply chains, then they're going to struggle, aren't they, to have their tenders delivered on. So I don't know about your market, whether you're public or private, whatever it might be, but go and talk to somebody that's been in the market. Go and talk to a procurement professional in a large company and ask them where it is they post their tenders, and then go and check those out. Right, let's have a look on Insta here. Quite a few long ones there. Let's have a look on what we got here. I'll put the chat on the screen, I think, as well. There you go. Look at that. It's like magic. So done that one. Trying to find one more. Cal Tu, I've already covered. What's the replay of this about valuing a business? Yours about, is it four times profit, two times revenue? Depends what sector you're in and margins and all that good stuff as well. And somebody else has asked here, Educators UK, about, is EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, amortization, is it a good use of operating profitability? It is, but it depends on the sector, depends on your margin, what you want to use it for. It also depends about how you calculate it as well, because the D&A, depreciation, and amortization, can change that number quite dramatically. So it's not just as simple as churning out a number. But EBITDA, in many ways, is used as a proxy for cash flow, and lots of businesses are valued on cash flow or EBITDA, especially in the sort of technology. Well, a lot of sectors actually. Most tech companies that are unprofitable, you tend to get valued on sort of revenue, which is it's a tricky number. It's got to be going in the right direction. Um, but there's the whole P&L, and also don't forget that once you get below sort of cash flow, it starts to include, once you have interest in the calculation, then your capital structure's in there. So things like debt is included then. Wow, it's a big question there. LinkedIn user, I'm not going to get to that one. It's just too long to read it. I'm just looking at it, but it's long, man. This is what I'm talking about, folks. You see it on the screen there, can't you? Let's get rid of the graphic there. I'll try and quickly skim through it. Okay, here we go. Which will be the next industry taken on by storm? Oh, the one that MoBlocks is in, clearly. That's a very difficult question to ask. Reed Hastings. I mean, too long, quite generic, but I think a generic answer is that most industries are going to be disrupted, even the ones you think have already been disrupted. So the disruptors now looking over their shoulder at some 16-year-old writing code. And also don't forget that, and I say this a lot actually, that if we do manage to perfect any type of anything close to general AI, you're gonna have machines writing code. You're gonna have software writing software, and you're setting a task, before you go to bed. You'll wake up in the morning, and it's evolved six generations. You won't understand what the hell it's doing or how it's doing it, but the results are amazing. So we are entering a period. I'm not going to bang on about it. It's one of my favorite subjects, but we're entering a period of potential exponential change. We struggle to understand that. We read about some place called Wuhan we've never actually heard of. Um, and then, someone's got a cold there, and then to get rid of this chat. And then suddenly, several months later, your kids can't go to school. Well, what the hell? That is geometric progression. That is exponential growth. And that's what's going to happen in our world, in hopefully my lifetime, definitely our kids' lifetimes. So it doesn't matter what you do or how you do it, you're going to be up against it, up against new entrants, because they're gonna have the edge. And what's gonna happen clearly is you're gonna end up some very, very large companies, yeah, the Metas of the world, that have the balance sheet, the cash, literally the cash. They have more cash than many nations, and they're gonna buy the winners, just like they bought Instagram or WhatsApp. And we hopefully the competition authorities out there will look at this again and realize that maybe Facebook shouldn't have been able to buy Instagram, whatever it might be, or it's happened in the media space as well. So this is constant now. This is the new. This is the new norm. It's constant innovation. And if you're not constantly innovating, at some point, someone's going to eat your lunch. And if you're not trying to move up the value pyramid, if you're at the bottom, I always say, doing the average thing, the average customer, the average price, someone's going to eat your lunch. So you need to move up the value pyramid. And what that means is, as a small business, is that you're more able to do that. The large companies have to stay a bit lower down in many cases because they're clunky and they have lots of infrastructure and they've got lots of sort of inertia in terms of culture and process and systems and investment in infrastructure, and they struggle to change. And it's partly scary, but it is in many ways the opportunity for small business owners. So I'm going to leave it there on that point, and I hope that was useful. I'm getting used to all the newer gizmos here. Hope you're enjoying the studio. We'll get some more stuff on the shelves here, and also we're going to be using this table to do more kind of talks with experts as well. So thank you, and have a great evening. Yeah, Instagram, you're still there. So I've ended it now. They've bit cut out for you, but we seem to have a few issues with the Wi-Fi in here actually. So I'll sort it out. But hopefully, thanks for joining. Thanks for the questions. Let me see if there's one more Instagram question here. I can drop this. Let's have a look. Let's end the stream there.